Okay, everyone. So, welcome to another episode of the Soccer Performance Podcast. We have another international guest today, a special guest, Ivan Senzen from Croatia. He is a coach with Dinamo Zagreb under 19. He's been with the Youth Academy for many years and a UEFA Pro licensed coach, a very high level coach with a lot of experience, and he will bring a lot of good information and value for us today. So I'm very excited for this edition. Ivan Sena, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming. Um,
Thank
how's
you.
it going? And would you be able to kind of introduce yourself a little bit?
Well, I can shortly because it's not so nice to talk about yourself. It's better
Of
when
course.
somebody else talks about you. So just shortly, this is my 20th year as a coach. So I started pretty early. I started when I was 21 years of age and been coaching in the Middle East for 10 years and been coaching in Dinamo Zagreb for 11 years now. And basically, that's it. A lot of experience in coaching, and started from under 8 and finished now in under 19. So I basically covered all the ages, was also as a technical director in the Middle East. So created some, let's say, structural programs for the academies and so on. So let's say all part of the academy is something that I'm being involved in.
Cool. So a lot of what we'll talk about is definitely what's going on in Dinamo. You've been there throughout the years. You saw the academy develop, and obviously they have a very good reputation. I was wondering if we'll start off a little bit, if you can touch upon the Dinamo philosophy and in youth development, kind of, it seems there's a good system in place. What are some key factors about Dinamo Zagreb Youth Academy?
So, of course, there are many factors, but some of the key factors are for sure selection of, let's say, good material that you want to work with. And the second key factor is the coaching stuff. Also in Dinamo Zagreb, sometimes you don't have the big consistency because you have a lot of also coaches who are with good quality and who want to go abroad and try to coach over there, or try to go to the next level and the next step to coach the first teams and so on. So it's really difficult to keep the good coaches in the club. Myself, I was also 10 years, actually 7 years first involved. Then I went away for 10 years and then I came back. So this is my third season that I'm going to finish in my second spell. And basically, I would say the club as a club improved a lot, but what have changed is and what you can see, it's the quality of the players. It has gone down a little bit. So by that, I mean, basically, I would say that the new era of childhood and growing up, a lot of kids who are not playing outside that much as they should or as we did when we were younger and so on. And I would say the quality of the material that we once have, and now it's changed a little bit and it dropped a little bit. So it's going to be interesting how it's going to be in the future.
That's actually a very interesting point because Juan and I we talk about in previous episodes. In Canada, people we talk about that a lot. The youth are not as active, and that's affecting their football development and overall athletic development as well. So the fact that you just mentioned that in Croatia is very interesting. It's something I never even thought about because we always kind of look at how successful the youth system is. So that's actually very interesting. You brought up a good point about the coaching staff. Yeah. And I remember when visiting, Luca was telling me a lot about the requirements, in terms of education. And I know in Dinamo, you guys are very big on coaching education. Can you talk a little bit about the requirements, what it takes to coach at Dinamo, the qualifications required? And it sounds like there's a minimum standard, which is actually a very high level.
Yeah. Look, I cannot say exactly that I know because I don't know the structure of the, let's say, administration part, but I would say that most of the coaches are UEFA coaches. So that that would be a minimum, at least for the ages under 13 and above. And for the ages under 13 and below, maybe you could find somebody with UEFA B license, but everybody, it has to be an UEFA license. That's a must. So again, I don't know exactly, because you know, I don't know every coach in the way which license he has, but you have a lot of UEFA A licenses, and UEFA Pro licenses, you have some of them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Also, Juan, did you have anything you want to touch on there?
No, I agree. I mean, I'm very intrigued to hear that when we spoke in previous episodes, the one that's closest in my memory, we spoke to Richard Bucciarelli, who's a very well-known coach here in Canada, and he was saying a very similar thing. It starts with coaching education, and so I think, you know, it's a key ingredient to success, right? If the educators, the people involved in coaching, teaching the young players aren't qualified to the highest level, and it's very difficult to assume that you're going to produce a product that's you know, that's high level. And it's just it's something that I expected, but it's something that also caught me kind of off guard, was what you mentioned about the lack of just, you know, physical activity in youth. I mean, we see that here in North America, but it's surprising for sure to see that in football countries in Europe, and something that that I think is obviously something new to deal with. But regarding that,
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. I will just to follow up on that question. My opinion is it's not only just about football. It's just the accumulation of the activities. Because for me, when we were younger, how can you replace today's activities? Let's say with you have 2 trainings a day. Let's say you have 2 training days, 2 training sessions a day, and let's say that each training session is 1.5 hours. So you have 3 hours of training, yeah. Mm-hmm. And even if when we were younger, we had 3 hours of training sessions in a day, okay, but we played outside 5 or 6 hours more. So just the accumulation of the activities, it's something that youth today, they're simply, I don't know, 10,000 hours of activities behind us. It's just simple math. And it's just normal stuff like running, climbing on trees, playing various sports, and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm. Senna, do you think that even with now, obviously, clubs are employing more strength and conditioning coaches, have you seen over the years, have injury rates gone up, even though there's more strength and conditioning coaches, maybe because athletes, you know, they're not accumulating all that physical activity, they're not fit as they would be back then? Is that something you're seeing, or maybe it's something different?
I would say that from a perspective of hear and say, you could say that, yeah, there is a lot of injuries, maybe more than before. But I always start from myself. And for me, training process is the process for the whole team. It's not just the strength conditioning coach. I will give you an example. Let's say your strength and conditioning coach is really an excellent guy, and who knows all about the things that he needs to do, who knows all about the details, who knows all about the preparation and so on. And let's say that he is doing with the boys everything that he needs to do, I don't know, for a half an hour before the training session. And if he does everything that he needs to do, but the head coach, he doesn't understand the periodization, he doesn't understand when he needs to push the boys and when he doesn't need to push the boy because it's maybe dangerous, if it's, I don't know, match day +1 or match day -1 and so on. So you can be the best strength and conditioning coach if the head coach doesn't know what he's doing. Or again, the opposite way. You could be the best head coach if the strength and conditioning coach doesn't know what he's doing, then he's going to kill the guys, I don't know, in the gym or in the preparation stuff and so on. So it has to be the full engagement of the guys who are working together, because it's like a puzzle and it doesn't go one with another. And if we all do not do the job that we need to do, somewhere it's going to break. And I had luck to work with one strength and conditioning coach who is now in Germany. He's also a Croatian guy. We worked together for 4 seasons. Now I work together with Luka for 2 seasons. And if I need to sum up these 6 seasons with good collaboration with all the coaches and so on, even this season, we didn't have one major injury. So of course you have a knock, you have a tear, you have it here and there. But if we summarize the whole season, we didn't have not one big injury. So it's all the part of the process, and it's if only one link is weak, then it's gonna, it's gonna break.
I really like how you kind of brought that up on the collaboration and the communication and working together. And I noticed that a lot there. But also, would you say that between age groups, kind of between the all the technical coaches of the different age groups, and it seemed like there's really good collaboration and communication between all there in the system, all going up to the youth director and everything. That's what I saw. And why is it that, because there's a lot of high level coaches there, people can have any excuse to have an ego and this and that, but it seems like everyone really works together very well. Why do you think that is, and how important is that?
Yeah, it's extremely important because, again, like in football, everything starts with communication. Communication is team tactics, so everything starts with that. If the communication channels are not clear, then everybody gonna go in a different direction, and there is no way to go, in a proper direction. Look, in every club, like in every little group or family or whatever, you have troubles, you have problems, and so on. The important part is to deal with that and to keep on going, to know what your task is, and so on. Of course, also in Dinamo, not everything is perfect, and you always have, let's say, big doubters, especially in Croatia, because it's the biggest club. It's the club that produces the most national team players, and you always have guys telling you, saying you it's not good, it should be better, and so on and so on. But really, the most of the guys who are in the club, they just don't even notice that let's say hear or say around, and you know your path, you know what you want from the club and from the environment, and you know how to develop players. And at the end, the end product is always here. So every year there is a one player at least who is going to the first team, and which value is, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 million euros and so on. Because if we don't have that, then the club will actually, it will not disappear, but that's the only, or 90% of the income of the club. You have sponsors who are, the income of the sponsor is really low. You have income of the spectators and the fans that is really low. So the only big, let's say, money flow is from the transfer of the players.
Very interesting. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. I wanted to just touch on that, because going back to what you said, the integration is the most important thing, right? If I'm a head coach, I have a strength coach, I have a technical trainer, I have maybe a psychologist, whatever subdivision coaches are underneath you. I think it's important, and we have those conversations even here. I mean, there's always, it's about, it's about the community. It's about coming together and making sure that nobody feels more important, or that a certain, field is more important than others. I think, and Mario and I have a strength and conditioning background, and sometimes strength coaches, it's difficult. Like you said, the most challenging thing is to communicate something and then actually have it manifest itself in the team. And we see that a lot. Some strength coaches that find strength training to be the pinnacle of everything, and so now they do too much of that. And then you have a head coach that doesn't value it at all, and so obviously there's imbalances there. So I think it's so important to just remind coaches that, the final product depends on the integration of many pieces. And so if you don't have these pieces, eventually there's going to be some sort of void, right? Would you agree? I think that's something that Dinamo, from what I've seen and from what I've heard you speak and Mario, the fact that they can produce these type of players shows that it's a well integrated program, correct?
Yes, it is. But I will also say, from my point of view, it sometimes is also chaotic.
Yeah.
Because look, every major firm or factory has also its problems. But the main important thing is that the football is first. The football is the starting point. And if you don't have that, then you have a big problem. I will give you an example. I was in the Middle East, and in one club, the football, actually, the football was a company. And the football, like the game football, was one part of the company. Like the other part of the company was, I don't know, kitchen. The third part of the company was transportation. The fourth part of the company was education and health of the kids. The fifth part of the company was, and they were all aligned. But football has to be first. So football has to be on top. And then these all other parts are just supporting parts. And if you don't have a structure like that, you're not going to succeed. It's impossible. So football first. So it means that everything is around football and everything supports football. And there are no separate parts. So football first, and then you have, okay, strength and conditioning, supporting football. Transportation, well, you need, boom, supporting football. Tactical knowledge, coaches, boom, supporting football. Because if football is only one part of this, it's impossible. Football has to be the starting point.
And Senna, when you first went to the Middle East, is that, and you said you implemented or tried to change some systems, is that what you tried to implement first right away, trying to get that football first mindset? Can you touch about that?
Yeah, it was, and I would say that not big changes were made, but at least changes were made, because they are functioning like that, you know, all the time. This is their culture, and it's so difficult to change it. But at least if you can win some guys who are decision maker, if you can convince them, then at least you could, you know, do something for the better. Because my two goals were that football first, and the second goal was good selection. Because for example, when I came to the Middle East, you could see that you have good materials, but you feel that there has to be more. There has to be better players. It's impossible that, I don't know, a big city like Riyadh with 8 million or 9 million people that doesn't have better football players. It's impossible. So let's say in Riyadh, my main target was selection of players and bringing talent in the club.
We have a similar issue in Canada, and I think that's a very important thing to talk about for our audience. And the fact that, you know, Canada, for instance, being such a large country, there's so much population, and we have that issue as well, where there's no way that there's not enough players. I think that there's so many potential players around, but you need, like you were saying, the right person to notice those qualities, notice good footballers, and then teach them how to play in a professional manner, right? Because you do see a lot of talented kids on the street playing whatever, but they don't necessarily have the right guidance, correct? And I see, for instance, I go back to what you were saying, football first. We see it here now. Now it's starting to get to a point where, you know, you have technical players, but like you were saying, but they have poor decision-making skills. We have technical players, but they're very weak. But at the root of everything is good footballers, right? And I want to ask you that. What do you see from a cultural perspective? You're in Croatia, and then you move to the Middle East, which is not very large football culture. But what do you notice? What's the reason? Why is there such a gap?
Well, I would say okay. I worked in Saudi Arabia and I worked in United Arab Emirates, and they are close countries, but let's say culturally totally different. Saudi Arabia, at the moment when I was there from 2010 till 2014, it was still a pretty closed country. and the only thing that the male population had for entertainment was football. So if you were already a professional footballer, it was fantastic. The stadiums were full. 60,000 people, 80,000 people in the stadiums, cheering on. It was great. The downside of that was only at that moment, I think only 30 clubs that were really football clubs, and all other stuff was little academies, football schools, and so on. But only 30 clubs. Now it's at least 100 or 150. It expanded a lot. So in Riyadh, you had only 4 football clubs on 8 million people at that time, and only Zagreb city of 1 million people has more than 80 football clubs, 80.
Yeah.
So it's a huge difference in that part, cultural difference, because there you only have football, but here football is a way of life. So everybody, every kid, every boy in Croatia wants to be a football player. So they start first playing, let's say, football, try to start in the club. If they don't make it, then they go to other sports. And I think, let's say, that's the biggest difference that I noticed, because I also had some football camps in America and so on, that I noticed between, let's say, Croatia and America. Because in America, football is not the first sport, not even close. Probably, there is hockey, there is baseball, there is basketball, there is American football. In front, maybe athletics. And then only then maybe kids start to think about soccer. But in Croatia, there is only one way, and that is football. And if you are not good enough for that, then maybe you are directed in some other sport. And to come back to the Saudi Arabia story, there they only have this because it's a sport where you don't need to invest much. You could see on the sand pitches only 2 rocks, it's a goal. And on the opposite side, 2 rocks, and they're playing football. And you could see in the whole city like that. Yeah. So funny, but me and some of my coaches there went on the pitches like that and just watched the games, and just picked up some kids and bring them to the club. And I had a situation that is impossible in Croatia. I had a situation where I went to one school and I picked up a boy who was 15 years old at the time. And he was invited in our club, and after 1 week he was starting the games in the first 11. And that is something impossible in Croatia, that you find somebody with 15 years old and you bring him to your club and he's a best player or a starting player or whatever. So
that's amazing.
Still there is such a big amount of players who were not even selected, who were overlooked, because a lot of people, small amount of clubs, even maybe today for this amount of people, and people or the players don't get a chance because they don't get selected. Nobody sees them.
Yeah, very cool. So it's actually how so many players, talented players who are just playing on the street all the time, the talent is there, that they just, there's not enough clubs, not enough coaches there to kind of identify that. Where I think in maybe Canada and America, okay, they do have, probably enough clubs and whatever, and players who are in those clubs, they're just simply not getting that coaching education and coaching development. And kind of, I wanted to segue now into youth development now. So you go to a place, you in Dinamo Zagreb Youth Academy, you have, football is the way, as you said. The players, they're so passionate about the game. How do you now nurture that talent? You said you started from when you did all the age groups, starting from the youngest age group when you're there. Kind of, how do you now nurture that talent and start to develop them into high-level footballers?
Look, the way that we are trying to do, it's like bombard them with everything that we as coaches we got, with all the information that we can provide to them, with all the little situation in the training sessions where we can, just challenge them to be better, just challenge them all the time in the training sessions, in the games, always demanding more. And sometimes it's even frustrating, because the players also know in Dinamo maybe after 6 months or 1 month, you could be also deselected from the club, because the club is always searching for better players, for new players. And a lot of players, if they don't play a lot of minutes, they're just not satisfied. And a lot of time they are just being released to some other clubs, which is, always an option. And sometimes even that option is a better option, because you go where you're going to play more, and by playing more also you hope you're going to develop and so on. For me, we are always emphasizing, yes, the coaches needs to be good, of course, the environment needs to be good, but for me the crucial thing is the selection of the players. And the players, if they are in a good environment, by environment I'm meaning, if you are a player and you train every day with 10 players that are equal as you or better than you, you're going to develop if you have a coach or you don't have a coach. But if you are in an environment where you are really good and the other players are really bad, you don't have a chance, no matter who is your coach. So this challenge every day in your training session is the most important part.
No, that's very good. That's very interesting. So the competitiveness and creating that environment where they have to fight for their position, and they're, with competing every day with very strong players who are also hungry. So it sounds like to me that's the number one most important thing, you think?
Yeah, the most important thing. For example, we had a really nice generation born 98, 99. And from that generation, we have now 3 national team players. And we have almost, let's say this generation was under 8, under 9, under 10. So you have maximum 15 players. So I would say from these 15 players, I would need to see correctly, but I would say 12 of them are today professional players. Wow. 3 of them in the national team, 2 more on a really, really high level, and maybe 6, 7 on a lower level, but still, living from football, and football is their life.
Would you be able to mention those players? Talk about those players a little bit?
One for sure is Borna Sosa. He's the left back of the Croatian national team, born 98. The second one is Lovro Majer. He's a midfielder playing in Lille in France. And the third one, you have Ivan Ušec. He's also born 98. He's playing in the first team in Dinamo Zagreb.
Very interesting.
And all those players, I remember you mentioning before, they all kind of developed together. And there's a few more, even not in the national team, who are actually very talented players. A part of that generation, 98. Other very good players. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, you have, I don't know, you have Brekalo. He's playing somewhere in Germany. Josip, I think in Wolfsburg, but I'm not sure. He's playing in Germany. Then you have one defender central. He's playing the first Croatian league in one smaller club in Slaven Belupo. Then you have Nicola Moro. I forgot. He's playing for Bologna. So also born 98. So, professional football. He was under 21 national team player, but until now he didn't receive the invitation for the A national team. But he's still, let's say, young. So let's see how it's going to develop in the next few seasons. Unbelievable how a great pool of talent, especially this year, produced a lot of professional players today.
Very interesting. I wanted to ask you a question, because you mentioned, the priority beyond coaching and beyond everything is the players that you bring in for them to compete within each other. Do you find what you said prior to us getting into that part of the conversation, but you said prior that sometimes, 10 months later, a player ends up getting, loses a spot in the academy. What tends to be the reason? Because I can't imagine that being a technical reason, right? If you brought him in at some point, he showed qualities, right? Well, what are the main reasons why players lose their spot, or what are the things that coaches find that make players say, you know what, he's not what we thought he was? What are the reasons?
Well, let's say when you are in the ages like 14, 15, 16, as you know, you have a lot of disbalance in the growth and coordination and so on. And in that period, you could see a player that is really, let's say, struggling with his body. And at that time, you are just not sure what's going to happen after 2 years. If he's going to grow up on, I don't know, and be an athlete, or he's going to stay, let's say, a little bit not coordinated and so on, although his technical level is okay. In this period also, if he's not performing well, the coach is not going to put him a lot of time, let's say, in the play, because you are always trying to compete for a spot, and you are always trying to compete that your team is playing well, and of course winning games. Winning is not just, let's say, a must, but you have to compete. You have to compete for something, and you cannot tell to the boys that it's okay to lose. It's not okay to lose. Of course, you will not, I don't know, punish them or something, but you want to win. You want to play and you want to win. And sometimes, even in that circumstances, some players are simply not mature enough to understand that. They're still kids, little kids. And even in our ages, under 18, we still have 2-3 players that you could see with their behavior. You could see when the going gets tough that they are weak at the moment, and it's okay to be weak. But Dinamo Zagreb is a club that cannot wait. You are ready with 17, 18, or you are not ready. It's simple as that. And then, okay, if we, I wouldn't say that we made a mistake. If you are not ready at this time, okay, go somewhere else, prove yourself, and if you're good, you're going to come back.
Right. No, that's very interesting. I find that so important for players to realize that. I think it gets to a point where if you want to be a professional player, it's beyond technical, beyond physical. It's almost it's a mental thing, right? It's about, do you have the mental resilience? Do you have the competitiveness? Are you a winner? Are you someone who takes the football as a profession, not just as a hobby, not just as entertainment? And it's so important. And this is why I ask you, because I wanted to come from you and not from me, because we tell players that we work with, in Europe, it's competitive. It's there's nothing given out for free. Somebody's always on trying to get your spot. And that is the reason why you get good players, because there's pressure.
Yeah.
And if you don't have pressure, then you don't have anything.
Yes, and the thing is that I would say you don't have to talk a lot in let's say Dinamo. You don't have to convince the players, because it is what and they see it on a daily basis. It's not just you talk the talk, but it's totally different. No, it's exactly like that. Because if you underperform 2-3 games, you're on the bench. And then if you're on the bench 2, 3, 4 games and the coach is giving you a chance again and you underperform again, now you are in the bunker.
Yeah.
So it's, mentally it's really tough. It's really tough.
Mm-hmm. Is there any way, Senna, that you guys try to develop or try to help those players improve that mental resiliency kind of earlier before it's too late? Is there any kind of way to implement that? Like you mentioned, there's a few players, okay, maybe, if they don't show signs of improving that soon, it might be too late for them and they might have to prove themselves somewhere else. Is there any ways that, in Dinamo, you try to improve that with those players?
Yeah, for me, it's pretty simple. And the way it goes by, let's say, repeating what I just said. If somebody is underperforming, you don't play him. If he's not playing, he should be, not satisfied, angry, and so on. But you should provoke a response. So a response you could see in the training session, or you could see in another game, or you could see a negative response, which is being angry all the time. So somebody else's fault. And then you just repeat that process. And again, of course, in the academy, you have coaches who talk more. You have coaches who talk less. I'm one of the coaches who talk less and who is trying to let's say, give an example by doing, whatever it needs to be done. And again, if somebody is underperforming, okay, you take him off. You just ask him a simple question. Why do you think you didn't start today, or you don't start tomorrow, or whatever? And he's going to say, probably because I was not good in the last game. And then you just say to him, okay, your performance was not good. What did you do to make it better? How did you train this week? And then if, again, he's honest and so on, he's going to say, okay, I trained really well. Or he's going to say, I didn't train good, whatever. And then again, you just ask a question. Okay, so what you're going to do in the next 7 days? So you're going to maybe start on the next Sunday.
Mhm.
And again, whatever he says, you just look what he's going to do on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on.
Yeah.
And simple as that. And then again, if he's underperforming, maybe you need just one sentence. And that one sentence is, okay, what you're going to do in the next 7 days. And that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's ruthless, but that's the only way. Because for me, and okay, not all the coaches have the same opinion or idea or whatever. But for me, if you want to be a professional athlete, you just have to have the toughest mindset that it's possible. Because what the guys are experiencing in the pro level, and especially today with the media and the networks and so on, it's sometimes it's even unbearable for them. If they make a sloppy pass in one game, it's going to be on all the headlines and the memes and whatever, or maybe 3 minutes after the game, maybe even the minute after he makes a mistake, like, I don't know, Harry Maguire and so on.
Yeah.
So it's so difficult to cope with that. And for me, if we don't create this, little stable monsters, they're not going to survive. It's impossible.
That's a very good way to put it, because we get that, and I'm sure you get it in Croatia, but I don't think you get it as much as we get it in North American culture, because the number one thing about a professional academy is that you're not paying. So you don't owe the player anything. The player depends on the club more than the club depends on the player. And here, we, based on culture, don't have the same system. Very similar to what you were mentioning about Saudi Arabia. There's not enough opportunity to create that type of structure. And so we try to give some, insight to players as to what they can expect in Europe or anywhere else where there's a professional structure. And if you are exposed to that at a young age, then likely you're going to be more prepared for adversity, for things like that as you get older. And it's important for players to realize, like you said, your job is not necessarily to make every player a competitor, a winner. People are people, right? People are winners, people are losers, people like to compete, people don't like to compete. And it's your job as a coach to identify potential, right? And I think that's so important. Everybody can have good ability to hit a pass or receive a pass or dribble, but beyond that, that's a very base level, right? I think standard has to be good football players, right? After that, what type of person are you? And it's so important to be 12, 13, 14, 15 and already understand that, yes, you're a kid, but if you want to be a pro, then you have to behave like a professional at a young age. Why? Because in the world, there's millions of players dying for that opportunity. And I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and if you ask every coach who is working in a professional club, which players you like the most, and everybody will say you like players who can be coachable, and you like players who just accept the situation as it is and continue on. So I would say that 100% of the coaches would say that these two things are the most attractive when you are trying to talk about the players and their reactions and what they do. Because if you need to convince or talk to every player every time you don't select them in the first 11, it's also not good. Yeah. Because you cannot spend so much time in the future when there's going to be a roster of 25 players plus and so on, and that he expects that the coach is going to talk to him, every single day about his decisions and so on.
Right.
No, that's very good. And I think the way you went about it and talking about it, it provides accountability for the player. versus instead of them finding excuses. And I think over in Canada or North America, let's say, players might, oh, I didn't play because this, or I was, I wasn't feeling good. I was hurt, or the coach doesn't know what he's doing, and this or that. But the way you went about it, it was so simple, and it just put accountability back on the player. What are you gonna do in the next 7 days? I think that's so powerful, and for players at home to listen, or any coaches, they hear that, okay, maybe they can implement some of that. But of course, the system, as Juan mentioned, kind of might act as a barrier to that, because it is, unfortunately, you pay in Canada to play. They don't have the luxury like in Europe, where the academy is, they just identify the best players and they bring them in and they support them. I think that was excellent. But I want
again,
okay, go ahead.
Ask. No, I just want to say again, the only way to not to create a competitor, but to become a competitor is in that environment. It's impossible in any other way. It has to have adversity. It has to have struggles. It has to have, let's say, unfairness, because a lot of times the players will feel that something was unfair. Although you as a coach, you will probably do the thing that you think it's the most important one for the team, or so on. So they have to experience all that stuff, to mentally break all that stuff, and to become, I always say this, to become little monsters that they control. If they're not a monster, they will not compete.
I agree. And I want to mention that to you, because let's use a player like Luka Modric. I think it's a very high bar to set, as for a player to say, okay, look, let's try to be like Luka Modric, right? I think there's only one or two, or you know what I mean, generational players. That doesn't mean that if you don't have that type of level, that you can't be a professional. You can be a professional with those qualities, right? Those attributes, those human qualities that have nothing to do with sport. And I'm sure if you talk to a basketball coach, it's the same thing. If you talk to a hockey coach, it's competitiveness. And if you don't get the opportunity to play professional, it's still going to be a very good attribute to have for the rest of your life. So and like you said it the best, you want to make a living out of football. At the end of the day, you're going to have to make a living, period. And if you can get those type of qualities, most likely you'll be fine, right? And I think players don't realize that. They realize it late. And we really try with the podcast, with conversation, to give insight to players in a time where they can still make a change, right? Where they can still have awareness and say, you know what, I'm going down the wrong path. We're going to take this approach now. So I really appreciate you saying it so clear, and I'm in a full agreement. Very well said.
Look, the thing is also today, how much do the players, let's say, trust the coaches, what they're saying? Because in today's world, you have them, let's say, in our club, we have them maybe 4 hours a day, 4.5, 5, depends on the day, depends on the training session, and so on. So 21 hours of the day, who knows who is talking to them, who is convincing them, who is saying to them stuff, and so on. And we had, I would say, a story for this season. So our team under 19 performed really well, and we had some, really, really good players who were standing out. And it was with some, let's say, wrong decisions in the first team. The first team only stayed with a low number of professional players in the winter. So they pulled our 6 under 19s players to the first team training sessions. And now you had a situation where 6 of our players were training with the first team, even sitting on the bench on the first team on the games, but, not playing. Coach maybe would say, okay, I would give somebody a chance and so on, but didn't play them because realistically, they're still not ready for that. And then, after 1 or 2 months, let's say, situation like that, they started to be unhappy because, they think, well, why I don't play in the first team? I deserve it. I'm training here now 2 months, 3 months, and so on. And you just need to reset them. I had one team talk before one training session when 4 of them dropped down to play for under 19, and I could see that they are not in the mood. It's like, now we have to play for under 19 and so on. And I just said to them, you need to zoom out, my friends. If the club was not in this situation, which is not ordinary for Croatian football, you would not even be there. So that's the first thing. The second thing, you are not even 18 years old or 19 years old, and you didn't even play one game for the first team, and you're going to be the Croatian champions in 2 months. So, zoom out and take this opportunity as an unbelievable opportunity to train with the first team, to be there, just be happy to be there every day. And maybe coach is going to give you 5 minutes in one game. And then when he's going to give you, then, take advantage of that. So the total different mindset, what they were thinking, you just try to convince them. And now, if you influenced at least 5% of their opinion, then maybe it's gonna worth something for the future.
Very well said. I think it's so interesting because if you look at the most successful players over time, it's usually players that come from a adverse background, from a poor country, from situations where they have to be grateful, where they have to show gratitude, where they have to just appreciate, like I said, the opportunity to make football as their job. And I think, it's clear, right? It's clear, and hopefully players realize that it starts from youth and realizing that there are challenges. Like you said it perfectly. We see that here too. I have some players that I speak with. Oh, I'm not playing this and that. I'm like, but you're 16 playing with the first team. That's an accomplishment. You have to have patience. You have to have a little bit of, you have to have patience to say, hey, look, let me zoom out based on who I am. This is a win. This is an accomplishment. And it takes time. And most players don't make it, right? Most players don't make it to that point, and it's not technical. That's what I really want to focus and emphasize. The reason they don't make it to the last point is not technical anymore. Correct? And I would love for you to summarize on that. It's complete mindset. That's the most important.
Look, like for me, again, the environment is crucial. And I would say if the boy has, let's say, a good and stable family, if the boy has a good and stable club, then stable coaches and so on, then he has a really, really good chance for him to be successful. And of course, if he has a God-given talent, let's say technically, then he stands a really, really good chance to become something. On the other hand, let's say also our club. When we are choosing players, we are choosing players mostly below the age of 12. So I would say maybe 90% of the players come until the age of 12, and then from 12 to 15 you have maybe 10% more, and then rarely we buy somebody when he's 16, 17 or 18. So whatever we spot on earlier, that's it. And again, the way that Dinamo plays, the way that Croatia plays, and the style and the culture, it's always about who understands the game and who plays the game well. So that's, let's say, the first selection part.
Right.
And in that age, when somebody is 9, you still don't know his personality, and you don't know how his personality is going to be. So you hope you can bring him to the club and you can mold him in the way that you want your athlete to behave and to become and so on. And then at the end, when he's 17, 18, it depends on his personality. If he's going to make
Hello?
Yeah, I think we had a bit of a freeze. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
If you
Cool.
can,
Sorry, Senator, if you want to repeat that last bit.
So for me?
Yeah, it cut out. If you don't mind repeating that last, 30 seconds or so.
Okay. Well, I finished up with you don't know how the player's gonna develop.
Yes, exactly.
Let's say his personality. You simply don't know. And then it's up to the player when he's 16, 17 or 18 if he's gonna accept the challenge and go with it, or he's gonna step back.
And a question I have, so on the topic of building those kind of mental monsters and whatever, a couple players, big players come to mind who very, very talented, but at a very young age were playing two age groups higher or broke into the first team earlier. Two players that come to mind, Joško Gvardiol and Mateo Kovacic. Obviously very talented players, but to me, based on what you said, they fit that perfect example of that, having that mentality. And I was wondering if you could touch on them a little bit, and then also kind of what makes such a good talent like that make it versus not make it, because there are examples as well from Dinamo. There were some exceptionally talented players who actually did not make it as well as they could have been, and one name that comes to mind is Alen Halilovic, who was an incredible talent years ago.
Yeah. Look, I can say only from my personal point of view with the players also that I coached, and I was involved when Alan was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And I don't know what happened in the development and where it stopped, because he was an unbelievable kid. So unbelievable kid, loving football, loving to compete, loving to work, loving to play, every day against older guys, showing what he can do. He was unbelievable with 10, 11, 12. So what happened with 15, 16, 17 and after, I don't know, because he had all the skills that are necessary to become successful, in football. On the other hand, let's say for Joško, I would say he was talented. We selected him also when he was 10 or 11 from one smaller club. But you could not say that he would be top class. But there was a trigger that happened with 15 or 16 when he realized that he's going to be a tough guy, and he just started to play tough. It was like boom, full speed, defending, tackling, taking balls, making risks. It was in 1 year a huge transformation. And then when the coach of the first team gave him a chance, he took it. There was no anxiety, there was no nervousness, there was no, oh, maybe I'm not so good and so on. It was just boom, face on, and in 5 games you could see he's an exceptional player, and that's it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Senna, thank you very much. We went over than what we said we would, but we were really enjoying this conversation, and you provided a lot of good insights and some stories there. So we thank you for that. But yeah, so one, I guess, fun question before you go.
Okay.
Who would you say is the player you were most impressed with throughout your time in Dinamo Academy that has come through the academy?
Without a doubt, Mateo Kovacic. He was unbelievable. I have one little story. We were in one tournament when he was, I think, 12, 13. And I was a supporting coach, and the head coach was there leading the game. I think we played in Italy somewhere with somebody, I don't know exactly. And Matteo, dribbled 2 players and cut back and, turned towards our goal. And in that moment, the coach, stood up and like in half a second, Matteo, what are you doing? And he's a back heel pass through 3 or 4 players, assist, goal. And the coach just said, okay, I'm not going to talk anymore.
Yeah, incredible talent, huh?
Yeah, he was the best. Yeah, he was the best.
Let me ask you this, because I'm curious, and you probably know better than anybody. Is there a young Croatian player right now that maybe is not talked about, that's in the ranks, even if it's not from Dinamo? I know obviously there's multiple clubs, but how is Croatia right now with regards to future prospects?
I would say that, you know, Croatia and Dinamo have a good future, and it's still the sport that everybody loves to play and that's gonna continue to love to play. And I would say a massive boost is this second and the third position in the World Cup. This is something that the guys who are now 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, it's just gonna give them a big boost to be a professional player. I look, I don't know, it's so difficult to if it's easy to, you know, to look in the future what's going to happen, you know, I would be a millionaire until now. But it's so difficult, and for me it's even stupid to, you know, give you some names now who are little kids and so on. But for sure, you know, Croatia is going to be stable in that part, and we're going to produce even more football players. I'm interested how it's going to be, like, say, 10 years from now with the new generations and so on, because what I told you already, the level of the quality is dropping a little bit. And it's going to be interesting how this part is going to develop. But what I told you already, I remember today where I was when the Croatian national team 98 took the bronze medal. So it's so much instilled in our brains. And I don't know if you saw the welcoming of the boys when they were coming back from the World Cup. If you go to YouTube and you see that, I mean, you cannot describe that. Zagreb, who is a city of 1 million people, it was more than 1 million people on the street. So it means that every person who lives in Zagreb or near Zagreb, they were in the streets when the Croatian national team came back from the World Cup. You had all the stores empty with no water to drink. Everything was you know, out. All the juices were out. All the beers were out. You couldn't buy nothing. So it's unexplainable. And when you are that kind of environment and you're 8 or 9, it puts something in your brain that you're gonna remember for the rest of your life, and it's like a good motivation to go forward.
Amazing.
Excellent. I really like that, and I think that is a good way to finish off. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was
I can hear you.
Yeah, I think that was a very nice way to kind of close the conversation, and I hope that, you know, for the players in Canada, that at least, you know, now that there's players playing in Champions League with the Canadian national team, they made to the World Cup. Hopefully now some young players will get at least a little taste of that feeling, and hopefully it will give them a boost. So I thought that was a nice way to finish it. Juan, anything else before we finish?
No, again, just thank you very much. Amazing conversation. You're obviously a very, very knowledgeable man, and I wish you the best with the team, with your future endeavors, and hopefully there's an opportunity to have a second conversation. I'm sure anybody listening would agree.
Yeah, why not, guys? Yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Senna.
Okay.
Good luck with the rest of the season.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
See you.
Bye-bye. Take care.